The guy standing on our porch had my face, my dad's eyes, and a secret I wasn't ready to hear. I was 19 the day Roan Mercer showed up and told me he was my brother. The weird part wasn't that he looked like me. Same jaw, same nose, same crooked left eyebrow. The weird part was my dad, Silas Calloway, just standing there, quiet, hands in his pockets, like he didn't just have a stranger claiming to be his son on our front porch. He didn't say no. He didn't say anything at all. And that was my answer. Let me back up. We lived in Crest Haven, a quiet town in southern Oregon that smelled like wet pine and old concrete. I'd been living with my dad since my mom died when I was 14. She had lupus, which eventually shut down her kidneys. Her passing wasn't sudden, but it felt like it hit all at once. One week she was up baking banana bread, the next she was in a hospice bed staring at the ceiling, too tired to blink. After she died, my dad shut down. Not like crying or drinking or punching holes in walls. Just quiet. He worked long hours as an electrician, left notes on the counter, and answered most of my questions with one-word grunts. We were never close, not even before she passed. But after, we might as well have been two roommates that shared blood and nothing else. I kept to myself. Went to community college, worked part-time at a gym. The only person I really talked to was Ione, my neighbor since elementary school. She knew when not to ask questions, which I appreciated. Life was manageable. Then Roan knocked on our door. It was a Saturday, early afternoon. I was halfway through reheating leftover mac and cheese when I heard a knock. I opened the door and froze. He looked maybe 24. Short, dark hair, faded red hoodie, duffel bag slung over one shoulder. But what threw me wasn't the clothes, it was his face. It was like looking at an older version of myself, like someone made a bad sketch of me, aged it 5 years, and turned it into a person. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "You must be Caleb. I'm Roan, your brother." I blinked. "Sorry, what?" Just then, my dad stepped around the corner behind me. He stopped dead when he saw Roan. They stared at each other. My jaw tightened. "Dad?" He didn't answer. Roan turned to him, voice calm. "You didn't tell him." No response. I stepped back into the house and let the door hang open. Not because I was inviting him in, but because I didn't know what else to do. Roan stepped inside like he'd already rehearsed this. I just kept looking back and forth between them. "What is this?" I asked. Finally, my dad sighed and said, "He's my son, from before." I remember standing in that living room, frozen. I stared at the carpet, the same ugly gray-brown color we'd had since I was a kid, and thought, before what? Before me? Before Mom? But I didn't ask. I didn't trust myself to say anything that wouldn't come out like screaming. Roan just stood there quietly, no smugness, no smile. He looked tired. "I just wanted to meet you," he said, nodding toward me. "I've known about you for a while." "Funny," I muttered. "No one told me about you." My dad didn't try to explain. He just said, "I need to go out to the shed." And just like that, he stepped outside, leaving the door half open behind him. That was my dad's version of parenting. Avoid the fire and hope it burns itself out. Roan sat down on the couch like it was his own. "You okay?" he asked. I stared at him. "You show up out of nowhere, drop a bomb on my life, and ask if I'm okay?" He raised his hands. "You're right. That was stupid." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small photo, old, creased, and clearly handled way too many times. It was a picture of a young woman holding a baby, standing beside a much younger version of my dad. "That's my mom," Roan said. Her name was Elise. The woman in the photo didn't look familiar at all. I couldn't read anything from her face except maybe sadness. Or exhaustion. I gave the photo back. "So why now?" I asked. "My mom passed last year," he said. "She told me everything before she went. I needed to know if he'd still pretend I didn't exist. And I guess I wanted to meet you too." I didn't respond. That night, my dad didn't come in for dinner. Not unusual. But when I walked past the shed to throw something in the trash, I saw him in there, sitting on an upside-down bucket, just staring at the wall. Lights off. Just silence. I didn't say anything. I just watched him through the crack in the door. The next few days were weird. Roan stayed in the guest room. Dad didn't ask him to leave. I didn't either. We barely spoke. I texted Ione, "May you ever find out you have a brother you didn't know existed?" Is that a joke?" "No, he's here. Staying at my house." "Do I need to come over with snacks or a baseball bat?" "Me both?" She came by the next day and met Roan. They got along weirdly well. I guess that made me the only one not adjusting. The next day I had a shift at the gym. I tried to focus. Coach Rick Warner could tell something was up. "You look like you just walked out of a horror movie," he said. I shrugged. "Family stuff." He didn't press, just handed me a clipboard and muttered, "Whatever it is, don't let it rot in your head too long. That's how people snap." That night, I couldn't sleep. I ended up walking downstairs around 1 a.m., super like that, grabbing water from the kitchen. As I passed by the hallway, I heard my dad's voice. The office door was almost closed, but not quite. "I didn't think he'd come here," he was saying. "No, he's here now. And Caleb, no, I haven't told him. He can't ever know the full story." I stopped cold. My chest felt like it was full of rocks. He can't ever know the full story. So what else was there? I went back to my room and lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling fan. All my life, I thought I just had a quiet, tired dad who worked long hours and didn't talk about feelings. Now I had a brother I'd never met, a father who lied by omission, and apparently a story I wasn't allowed to hear. Whatever peace I thought I had, gone. And something told me this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up and forgot for 5 seconds that my world had exploded. Then I walked into the kitchen and saw Roan standing at the stove, cooking eggs like he'd lived here his whole life. He wore one of my old hoodies, one I hadn't seen in over a year. He must have grabbed it from the coat rack in the laundry room. He turned, saw me, and smiled like this was normal. "Hope you don't mind," he said, flipping the eggs. "Didn't want to wake anyone banging around the cupboards." I just stared at him. He was using my pan. In my kitchen. In my house. I couldn't decide if I wanted to punch him or ask him how he made the eggs look that perfect. Dad came in 10 minutes later. Same stiff walk, same tired look. He grunted something that was probably morning, grabbed coffee, and sat at the table like we weren't living in a soap opera. We ate in silence, forks clinking, chewing. No one said a word. After Roan cleared his plate, he looked at me and said, "You want to go for a walk or something later?" I blinked. "A walk?" He nodded. "Thought it might help. Talk if you want." Talk? I didn't even know this guy 3 days ago. Now he was trying to bond. I agreed anyway, not because I wanted to talk, but because I needed to hear what he thought this was. We ended up walking the back trail behind our neighborhood. It was just gravel and trees and the occasional wild rabbit darting into the brush. Roan shoved his hands into his hoodie pockets and looked around like he was seeing real trees for the first time. "I grew up in Bakersfield," he said. "Never saw this much green." I kept my hands in my jacket, arms crossed. "Why now?" He glanced over. "Because my mom's gone. Because I didn't want to wonder anymore." "You said she told you about us before she died." "Yeah," he said. "She told me who my dad was, told me about you, about your mom." I flinched. He noticed. "Sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean it like that." I kept walking. "What did she say?" He was quiet a second. "That your mom was good, too good for him, that she didn't deserve any of it." I stopped. That hit harder than I expected. He saw my reaction and held up a hand. "I'm not here to trash him," he said. "I just want to understand the man who made me. That's all." I didn't respond, because I didn't know if I wanted to understand him too. That night, I vented to Ione. We sat on her front porch, passing back a bottle of orange soda like we were kids again. I didn't even ask if she wanted to hear it. I just spilled everything. She listened, legs tucked under her, hoodie pulled tight around her. When I finished, she said, "So your dad cheated, had another kid, hid him your whole life." "Yeah." "And now that kid's wearing your hoodie and cooking eggs in your house," I nodded. "Basically," she raised an eyebrow. "Do you like him?" I blinked. "What? You've got that look," she said. "The one you get when you don't want to like someone, but you secretly do." "I don't like him," I said quickly. "He's calm. Too calm. It's weird." She smirked. "Sounds like someone else I know." I threw a bottle cap at her. The next few days blurred together. Roan stayed. Dad didn't say anything about it. He just kept going to work like it was any other week. Roan offered to help around the house, did dishes, fixed the squeaky screen door, even changed the oil in Dad's truck. It was like he was trying to prove something, or earn something. And I hated that it was working. But there were cracks. Roan slipped up once during dinner. He mentioned a trip his mom took to Ashland the year I was born. She said it was the last time she ever saw him, he said, pointing a thumb toward Dad. Dad's fork froze midair. That didn't make sense. Mom and Dad were still together that year. I did the math in my head. That meant he didn't just cheat before he met my mom. He cheated while they were married. I looked at Dad. He was chewing slower now, eyes low. Roan didn't realize what he'd said, but I did. I called Aunt Diane the next day. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, kid," she said. "Everything all right?" I hadn't called her in months. I just came out with it. "Did you know about Roan?" Silence. Then, yes. I stood there, phone cold in my hand. "How long?" "Since your mom got sick," she said quietly. She told me one night after a hospital visit. She was tired, angry. She said she was trying to forgive him, but couldn't. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because she didn't want you to hate your dad," Diane said. "She told me, don't let Caleb carry my bitterness. Let him have at least one parent he can trust." I swallowed hard. "She asked me not to tell you," Diane added. So I didn't. We sat in silence for a moment. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have told you when she died." I hung up without saying goodbye, not out of anger, just because I didn't know what else to say. That night I walked past the shed again. Dad was in there, same bucket, same darkness. But this time, I opened the door. He looked up, surprised. "You're not going to talk, are you?" I asked. He didn't answer. I stepped inside, stood over him. "I don't need you to lie to me," I said. "But if you're not going to tell me the truth, I'm done. I'll pack a bag and go." He looked down at his hands. "You're not leaving," he said softly. "Then talk." His mouth opened, then closed. Finally, he said one thing. "There's more to the story than you know." And I knew he wasn't talking about Roan. I went back inside and slammed the door behind me. Roan looked up from the couch. He had a book open in his lap. It's probably one of mine. "You good?" he asked. I didn't answer, because the truth was, I wasn't. And something told me I hadn't even heard the worst of it yet. After that night in the shed, I knew he was hiding something bigger than a secret son. But he didn't talk. He just went to work like he always did, as if I hadn't basically threatened to leave. I kept waiting for him to open the door. He never did. So I opened it for him. It was a Sunday morning. The rain was light, just enough to keep most people in bed. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through the classifieds like anyone still finds jobs in newspapers. I pulled out the chair across from him. "We need to talk." He didn't look up. "About what?" "About Mom." That got his attention. His fingers paused on the page. Then he slowly set the paper down. I pushed the silence. "I know Roan was born while you were still married to her." His jaw flexed like he wanted to deny it. But he didn't. "And I know she found out," I added. "Aunt Diane told me." He leaned back in the chair, eyes closing for a long second. Then he said it. "She found out the day after Roan's first birthday." I just sat there, waiting. She never screamed, never left, just looked at me like I wasn't even in the room. That was the worst part, he said. The way she went quiet. How she just started disappearing after that. "I begged her to forgive me," he said. "Told her it was a mistake, a one-time thing." "Was it?" I asked. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No." That one word changed everything. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A second life he built behind her back. He said it started when she got sick the first time, when the doctors told her to stop working, stop lifting heavy things, stop driving herself. She stopped being my wife, he said, started being my patient. I wanted to reach across the table and hit him. But I didn't, because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't about love or loneliness. It was about control, about weakness. And now it was about me, sitting across from him, trying to unlearn everything I'd been raised to believe about what a good man looked like. He told me her depression got worse after she found out, that she started losing weight, forgetting things, sleeping in the guest room. I asked if she got help. He said she wouldn't talk to anyone, not even him. "I ruined her," he said quietly, "and she still stayed, for you." I think that broke me more than the cheating, because I remembered her late-night tea, her quiet humming, her shaky hands when she brushed my hair. I thought she was tired from being sick. But maybe she was tired of pretending. That night, I walked out of the house without saying anything. Ione found me sitting on her porch. She handed me a hoodie and waited. When I finally told her everything, she didn't say "I'm sorry" or "that's awful." She just nodded, like she was storing it all in some invisible box. You think she would have left, I said, if I hadn't been born? No, she said. She loved you too much. Maybe that's the problem. I avoided Roan for a full day, not because I hated him, because I didn't know how to look at him without seeing all of it. The affair, the lie, the weight Mom carried until it crushed her. But he found me out back the next evening, sitting on the steps. He sat beside me and said nothing for a while. Then he finally spoke. My mom didn't know either. I looked over at him. She didn't know he was married, he said. Not at first. He told her later. Said it was complicated. That he wanted to leave her but couldn't because of family stuff. I laughed bitterly. I was the family stuff. Roan nodded. She was mad when she found out. Left him. Moved us across the state. But she never hated him. Not really. Why not? He paused. Because he gave her me. There was something in that moment. Some weird, tangled honesty that I couldn't untangle. We sat there as the sun dipped low behind the trees. Two strangers tied together by the same selfish man. Two different moms. One of them broken. The other already gone. The next day, I sat with Aunt Diane on her back porch. She poured tea like it was an apology and handed me a photo album I hadn't seen in years. Your mom never stopped loving you, she said, even when she felt like the rest of her life was falling apart. I flipped through the pages. Birthday parties, band concerts, Halloween costumes. She used to whisper to herself at night, Diane said. I'd hear her when I stayed over. She'd say, I'm doing this for Caleb. One more day. Just one more day. My throat tightened. She didn't die from lupus, Diane added. Not exactly. Her body gave out because her heart did first. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't tell my dad I was leaving. Didn't leave a note. I crashed on Ion's couch for a while. Then rented a room in a house on the other side of town. Started working extra hours. Took time off school. Roan reached out once, said he understood if I needed space. I told him he wasn't the reason I left, but he was part of the picture. We both were. I saw my dad one more time before the summer ended. He showed up at the gym, just stood near the front desk, holding his hat in both hands like it might hold him together. I just wanted to see if you were okay, he said. I didn't say I was. I didn't say I wasn't. I just nodded. Then I went back to work. It's been almost 9 months since I moved out. I haven't been back to the old house, haven't sat at that kitchen table, haven't asked my dad a single question. But I think about him. Not because I miss him, because I'm trying to figure out what kind of man I don't want to become. I still talk to Roan. Not often, but enough. He moved to Eugene, picked up a job at a local auto shop, and started taking night classes at the community college there. Sometimes he sends me dumb memes. Once he mailed me a bag of sour gummy worms with no note because I told him they were my favorite. We're not friends. We're not brothers. We're something in between. Two people connected by a lie, trying not to let it shape us. We met up once. Neutral ground. Coffee shop near the interstate. We sat across from each other for over an hour, talking about everything except our father. The weather. Music. Bad coffee. I asked him if he hated Silas. He shook his head. No, he said. But I think I understand him a little better now. Doesn't mean I forgive him. Yeah, I said. That sounds about right. Ione stayed in my life through all of it. She was the one who told me I didn't owe anyone closure. That forgiveness wasn't a prize I had to hand out just because someone apologized. That healing could mean walking away and never looking back. She was right. I think I used to believe forgiveness had to look like a movie scene. Tears, hugs, emotional music swelling in the background. But sometimes forgiveness is just not caring anymore. Not letting it eat you up from the inside out. I kept working at the gym. Coach Huxley offered me more hours. I started saving for a car that wasn't one pothole away from disintegrating. I applied to transfer universities next fall. Nothing fancy, just something new. Somewhere I could start over with my own name and my own story. Therapy helped too. It wasn't some miracle fix, but it gave me words for things I never knew how to say out loud. Like how betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through the cracks in silence. I realized I'd spent most of my life living next to a man I didn't know. And worse, I had idolized him. Not because he deserved it, but because he was all I had. One night, I sat on the floor of my apartment and pulled out the old photo album my aunt had given me. I hadn't touched it since the day she handed it over. I flipped through page after page, birthday parties, holiday dinners, school plays, and I looked for her, for my mom. In every photo, she smiled. Always smiled, even in the background, even when she looked tired, even when her eyes looked hollow. I sat there for hours, not crying, not angry, just quiet, trying to memorize her face, trying to remember the version of her that wasn't built around pain. I don't talk about my dad with most people, not because it's some big secret, but because once you say, yeah, my dad cheated on my mom and hid a whole son from me for 19 years, the conversation changes. People look at you differently. They either pity you or worse, they try to make it make sense. Maybe he was scared. Maybe he thought he was protecting you. People make mistakes. Sure, people make mistakes, but you don't accidentally lie for 2 decades. You don't trip and fall into a second family. You choose that. You choose it every day you stay silent. The last time I saw him was 2 months ago. He showed up at the gym again. Same spot by the front desk. Same nervous hands. "Just wanted to see how you're doing," he said. I nodded. "I'm doing all right." There was a long pause. He looked older, smaller, like time had taken a few extra swings at him. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." I nodded again. "I know," I said, "but I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever." He didn't argue, didn't ask for anything else. Just said, "I understand," and walked out. That was it. No dramatic ending. No redemption arc. Just a quiet goodbye. I still carry the truth with me, but it doesn't weigh me down like it used to. It just sits there, like a scar. A reminder of what I survived, of who I've chosen not to become, and of who my mom was in all her quiet strength. Sometimes I still think about what would have happened if Roan had never knocked on our door. If I'd never known. If I'd just kept living under that roof, thinking my dad was decent, believing the past was simple and clean. Would I be happier? Maybe, but I wouldn't be free. I don't believe in happy endings anymore. I believe in honest ones. This is mine. I lost a version of my dad. I gained a strange connection to a guy I once hated on sight. I'm still working on myself, and I'm finally living a life that belongs to me, not someone else's lie. That's not happy, but it's real. And for now, that's enough. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. If you want to share your stories, please comment below. Additionally, what is your opinion on the poster's decision?